You ever have one of those mornings where one little mistake starts making you question a whole lot more than it should? I had one of those a few weeks ago, and I've been thinking about it ever since. I've driven the same route to work over and over again for many months. It's almost automatic now. You know how that is. You don't really think about it anymore. You just go on automatic. You just go. Well, I leave the house, I head towards the freeway. 40 minutes later, I'm pulling into the parking garage. You know how that goes. The routine has become so familiar, I could probably describe every part of it to you without even doing the drive. And actually, that's probably something that I shouldn't admit. Um, so I parked, I got out of the car, I walked around to the back. I've got a 2024 Dodge Charger. So I go to the back, open the trunk, and my office bag was not there. I need my laptop for work. Laptop's in the office bag. So, how do you think that made me feel? No work computer. So, my first thought was not philosophical. My first thought was, oh shit. Um, Now, if you've ever forgotten something important, you know exactly what happens next. Your mind starts racing. Did I leave it at the office yesterday? Did somebody take it? Did I leave it at home? And I think I imagined every possible explanation in about 3 seconds. I stood there looking into an empty trunk, almost hoping the laptop would magically appear if I just looked hard enough. I went from the trunk to the passenger compartment. I looked in the back seat. I looked on the floor. It's not there. So, what do you do? I thought about it a little bit and I said, you know what? I can probably work today without my laptop because I know that there's other laptops in the office. That friend of mine that I told you about that was rifted a while back, her computer's in there. Heck, I think maybe she had
I'm not
two.
quite sure how to help you with that.
Well, that was an interruption from a rude lady. Uh, so, in any case, I had my office key, so I went ahead and went into the office and looked around. And I found her laptop. I got it set up with my dock, all ready to go. Try to enter the password in as a guest, and that doesn't work. There's some kind of a weird pop up. There's some kind of a weird pop up that comes up that tells me I'm not part of the system or something. So then I tried computer two because she's got a second one. And I thought, well, I got to log in with that bad boy. Same old thing. And then the third computer was a previous supervisor who left on her own volition when she saw how things were
From
headed.
JustAnswer.com. Again, the previous supervisor was approved months ago, but she can no longer help me due to her battle with cancer.
Wow. Um, I can see this is going to be an issue of comedies if this thing keeps interrupting me. Um, and it occurs to me that its name is Computer instead of Alexa. So that's why that keeps happening. All right, so let me get back to what I'm trying to talk to you about. I went to the third computer, and the third computer didn't work either. So, so I figured I'd take advantage of the fact that I'm at the office, go to the restroom, and then look around. You know, I got everything fired up at the office, but I can't do my thing. So I went ahead and left. Um, so then I'm back in my car. I'm taking the 40-minute drive back home so I could see, uh, what's going on. And so, I had to be tortured for the whole drive while I'm thinking, geez, what happened? Uh, I know that when I got up that morning, I was cautious to make sure that I had my door key so I could get into the garage and I could get into the office. And so I took that out of my bag. I actually stopped at the back of my car. I put my bag on the trunk and got the key out and made sure that I had that key in the passenger compartment. And then I went in the house for something and came out. And apparently, I'm thinking maybe I drove off with this bag on my trunk. But and I have to pull out of the garage and drive away. So where does the bag go? Did the bag fall off in my driveway? I'm thinking as I'm going along, will I pull up and see it in my driveway? Uh, After I pulled out that morning, I went ahead and took a little journey to the mailbox to see if we got any mail. Maybe it was somewhere between the house and the mailbox, but I didn't feel like I ran anything over. I didn't feel like something fell off of the car. So, these things are all going in my mind on the drive back home. Now, you know, this kind of thing, I guess, happens to everybody. But I'm thinking to myself, maybe it's because of my age. You know, every unexpected little mistake seems to carry more weight than it used to. Thinking, God, how could I forget something like that? Uh, but along the way, somehow little mistakes like that just felt bigger. This one felt really big. I felt really stupid. Uh, so you have to ask yourself, are you slowing down? Is your memory changing? Is this what getting older looks like? And one final question then quietly enters the conversation. Is it time? Is it time for me to leave? Is it time for me to retire just because I misplaced my laptop bag, with all my important stuff in it? It wasn't just my laptop in there. I had notes, codes, stuff like that. But you know, is that one mistake justify retiring? Saying to yourself, "Geez, I'm done. I've done too much." I don't know. Um, it's interesting how our mind can make that journey so quickly. Is it because I want to retire? Who knows? All right. So I don't think the story is really about an office bag or a laptop. It's it's something entirely different. All right. You probably didn't notice I just took a little break, and I thought I would slip into a little bit different attire here. Spruce up the video a little bit. So, I was in the car for a while, freaking out, thinking about all the possible things that could have happened to my laptop bag. And then, after a while, um, it really wasn't about the laptop bag anymore and what was in it. I knew that I had to go home. I knew that I had to look for it. And that part was pretty straightforward, you know. Something else had climbed into the passenger seat with me. It was a question. And questions, well, questions have a way of growing. I've spent most of my professional life asking questions. As an attorney, that's what you do. You ask questions of your clients, you ask questions of witnesses. Sometimes you ask questions of judges. But every once in a while, life asks you a question. And sometimes those are the hardest questions to answer. I started wondering, why did this bother me so much? I mean, people forget things every day. They leave their phones at restaurants. They forget their glasses. They leave groceries in the trunk. And boy, that could be a real issue here in Arizona. Really. Lately, we've been 90 degrees in the morning when we wake up. So I probably smiled at stories like that myself. Why was this different? I think, and I'm still sorting this out, I think it was because this mistake didn't feel like me. I've always prided myself on being prepared. You don't practice law for decades by showing up unprepared. At least most of us don't. You develop routines, checklists, habits. They become part of who you are. So when I opened that trunk and there wasn't my office bag in there, it just wasn't an inconvenience. It felt, if I'm being honest, like a crack in something I'd always counted on. My confidence. And that's what surprised me. Not that I forgot something, but how quickly my mind jumped to conclusions. The mind does all kinds of crazy stuff. It didn't say, well, everybody has an off day. No, my mind went somewhere much less charitable, and it does that frequently. I started asking questions like, are you losing a step? Is this just stress? A lot of stress in that job. Or is this what getting older looks like? Have you ever done that? Had something small happen and suddenly your mind starts writing a story that may not even be a true story. I think a lot of us do that. And maybe that's one of the unexpected parts of getting older. It's not that we stop making mistakes. We've always made mistakes. It's that we start assigning them meaning. A forgotten name isn't just a forgotten name. A misplaced set of keys isn't just a misplaced set of keys. A forgotten laptop, it's just a forgotten laptop. Or at least that's where my mind went that morning. Now, before anybody watching this starts worrying, let me say something important. One mistake doesn't define us. One forgotten item doesn't let us into a situation where we're worried about our future. We all have busy days, stressful days, distracted days. And if that's all this was, then maybe the real mistake wasn't forgetting the laptop, the bag. Maybe the real mistake was believing the first story I told myself. You know, I still had no idea where that bag was. But by then, it almost wasn't the point anymore. My first question that morning wasn't, where's my laptop? Where's my bag? It quickly became, what's wrong with me? And maybe that wasn't the right question either. You know, I've had a lot of clients over the years. When people came into my office, they usually thought they knew what their problem was. They just needed a lawyer to help them fix it. But after we talked a while, sometimes we discovered the real issue was something completely different than what they thought. I guess old lawyers never stop thinking like lawyers. So I started cross examining myself, not under oath, just quietly. Vincent, have you ever forgotten something before? Well, yes. Have you ever been under stress? Absolutely. Have you ever gotten distracted? More times than I care to admit. Vincent, have you ever worked long hours? I've been practicing law for over 3 decades. Of course, I've worked long hours. So, if all of these things are true, why was I so quick to assume the worst? I think because getting older changes the way we interpret ordinary events. When we were younger, a mistake is usually just a mistake, and we forget about it. As we get older, sometimes we begin wondering if every mistake is trying to tell us something. Is there a story behind that? Sometimes it is trying to tell us something, but not always. I have been thinking about that distinction. Sometimes life is trying to get our attention. Sometimes we're working too hard. Sometimes we are exhausted. And sometimes we've let stress build up. Sometimes it's time to slow down. But sometimes we simply forgot the office bag. We forgot the laptop. And maybe that's enough. I think wisdom comes from learning the difference, right? I still don't know exactly why the morning stayed with me. I found the laptop bag. I laughed at myself. I drove back to the office, and the day went on. But something else stayed behind. That's right, a question. Am I paying attention to my life, or am I simply moving through my routines? Because maybe that's the real crossroads. Not whether I forgot something, but whether I'm still living intentionally with purpose. And if I'm honest, I think that's a question worth asking. Whether you're 35, 55, or even 75. So maybe that forgotten laptop wasn't trying to tell me that it was getting old, that I was getting old. Maybe, maybe it was reminding me to slow down long enough to ask better questions. Tastes good. I've been thinking about retirement for quite a while now. And if there's one thing I've learned, it's this: retirement isn't one decision, it's 100 little decisions. It's paying attention, it's noticing, it's asking ourselves questions we may have been too busy to ask while we were building our careers, raising families, meeting deadlines, and just trying to keep up with life. And every once in a while, life taps us on the shoulder. Sometimes it uses something wonderful: a grandchild, a vacation, a sunrise. And sometimes it uses a forgotten laptop. I don't know whether that morning meant anything at all. Maybe it was simply one of those absent minded moments we all have. Maybe I was tired. I think I was. Maybe I was distracted. I get up at 4 a.m. and leave for work at 5 a.m. or so. But you know what? I'm actually grateful that it happened. Why? Because it caused me to stop and think. And in this season of my life, I don't think that's a bad thing. So that brings me to today's Crossroads question. Has there ever been a seemingly small event in your life that caused you to ask a much bigger question? Maybe it wasn't a laptop. Maybe it was something completely different. I'd really enjoy hearing your story. Not because there's one right answer, but because I think we can learn from each other's journeys. If this conversation resonated with you, I hope you'll join me again. Each week, we'll explore another crossroads, another question, another part of this journey we call retirement or pre retirement. There we go. Until next time, I'm Vinny. This is Retirement Crossroads. And remember, the quality of our lives is often determined not by the answers we have, but by the questions we are willing to ask. Choose thoughtfully.